Good day, ye fellow travelers. Thank you for joining us on this trip into the void. Co-captains Nagy here with my surfing sardine, Mr. Fish. How we doing today, bud?
Just flipping around. I'll get too far.
There you go. Got to get that aerial going. I'm buzzing. I've had too much caffeine and a ton of research on this. So, to all them listeners, I apologize. You're going to be hearing
What's
my voice a lot.
what's too much? Like, what's the actual metric?
Um, the we make Jared got us a nice espresso maker. So it's usually like a double of that. And then
So
I
about
didn't want more.
150.
Yeah, and then I had a couple glasses of green tea. Just, not have coffee with a bunch of sweetener. Just have some good old green tea in
So
it.
there's probably about
So
30 milligrams in each of those. So 90 on top of. So you're looking at.
it's enough. So we got a bunch of caffeine, but I needed it. So for this episode, we're going over all of the ship classes of Royal Caribbean with minor breakdowns on certain things, on exactly what these ships entail if you're going to consider it. Because believe it or not, a lot of people in the Midwest don't really know what cruise ships entail anymore. It's kind of bizarre. I've had, quote, floating petri dishes, gross, and what do you even do on a cruise ship besides wait for the next port, which was mind boggling.
Clearly, they had
But
never seen Titanic.
I think that's got to be, but it's also you have to kind of blame the lack of commercials and streaming services, because there used to be commercials like, "Hey, go to Sandals Resort," and they show you like, "Oh, you can go ziplining and surfing and blah blah." Like now it's you wait 5 seconds so you can hit the skip ad button and go back to the content you want to see. So it's not totally surprising for someone to go, "What do you even do on a cruise ship now besides sit by the pool and order cocktails?" Like, yeah, that's one of 1,000 things you can be doing at any moment in time on most ships. So we thought we'd enlighten you that information.
Yeah. And also, to your point of getting ads shorter, is Royal Caribbean had that Seek Adventure, which I thought was a genius 5-second ad.
Oh, they are crushing it with
Like
like,
they nuked that one out of the park. The second I saw it, I was like, well played.
yeah. And I think it was super, like they even threw a short one in like the Super Bowl. And I'll be walking around and randomly see Royal commercials and just be like, how did that get in there? And mad respect to their marketing department for doing that,
hmm
because you're not seeing, I mean, you see Shaq with Carnival, and that's always a good one. Shaq markets himself very well. So I'm like, whoa, okay. So we will be talking about other cruise lines, but the basis of at least my life is molded by Royal. So, sometimes we'll stay a little bit loyal to that anchor.
Cool. So I'd say, let's start from the bottom and work our way up. So, what would be the
Beautifully.
smallest class of ship that they own?
Just to give reference, I went and found one that everyone can relate to, and it's this little ship called the Titanic.
Okay.
So everyone's seen it. You've seen James Cameron, you've seen Leo just crushing it. Uh, the Titanic was about 800, well, it was 883 feet long. And it was about gross tonnage, meaning its total weight with everything and all the people on it was about 52,000 tons. And that's just when it's floating in water doing its thing. So that's just, you've seen the shows, you've seen the things. Titanic did emphasize the luxury and the lounging, and that's truly what people can at least have a base idea of. Hey, you're on a ship, and that one is kind of just going A to B. Fortunately, they didn't make it, but that gives you your nice little baseline of that's a ship.
Yeah,
The
B for
smallest,
bottom of the ocean.
yeah. Would you go on side note? Would you go on Titanic too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
hmm
Oh man, I think that it would be hilarious just to see that and just be like, see that giant building? That's just the radars looking for icebergs, which are probably all melted at this point, trying to get from England to New York. So you're probably good there. But I think it's really funny people with the superstitions of like, no way, man. It's like, dude, it's 2024. Like, what is that?
These
X amount of
ships are
years later.
built till they are built not to sink, even due to blatant negligence. Like
Yeah.
you have to have gone out of your way to destroy all the fail safes to make sure
Yeah.
that these ships sink nowadays. So there's no reason I wouldn't go on it.
Yeah. The other reason was just to go into a structural thing is Titanic had water doors and things like that, but they had ceilings that weren't enclosed. So the water ran over all of them, and that's why it sank. Now these ships, you could literally punch a hole in the middle of the biggest ship in the world. It will box it all off, and it will keep sailing with basically an indoor aquarium across the oceans. Just being like, yeah, we'll deal with that later, but we got islands to get to.
And it'll be
So
my cabin, most likely. That is fucking just in there fishing around, and I'm like, God, guys, I forgot my Game Boy. Can I please just like?
yeah,
It's the one
it
thing
shows
that
the
I own.
naivety of my knowledge going into cruise ships is I had a waterproof bag with goggles and a
Mhm.
waterproof flashlight in my cabin in a place I could get to in case it like hit the fan. And then after like a month, when they take you through all the safety trainings and teach you, like they do teach you about the ships and how watertight
Mhm.
doors work and things like that. I was like, oh, this is almost as dumb as being like, I was like, should we get walkie talkies? And I remember the like crew laughing at me, being like, what are you, a guest? Like, no, you're good. So let's start it off. First ship class is called Vision class. And like we've said before, all the ships are named of the first ship that comes out in that class. And then all the ones after are Oasis class named XYZ and so on. So the Vision class encompasses the enchantment of the seas, the grandeur of the seas, the rhapsody of the seas, and the vision of the seas. These are already 70 to 80,000 tonnage. So they're already 150% bigger than the Titanic. Okay, these are going to be a lot smaller. These ones focus on their shows, the relaxation, minor activities. There are like bingo and things like that, not minor age, minor meaning like not grand ship involvement. Like if you want to
No
go to
Diddy.
trivia and things, yeah. If you want to go to shows and things like that, they're there, but it's also they emphasize like, no, you're going on this ship to relax, to chill. They have a lot longer itineraries because the smaller ships can get to more ports and things like that. This year for 25 to 26, most of them are doing uh, Caribbean runs ranging from 4 or 5 nights to 7, 14 nights in the Caribbean, with other ones going from like New York and Canada down to the Caribbean. So longer cruises, you're getting on a ship, you're relaxing, couple ports.
And how many
And
ships are in the Vision class again?
four.
4.
Yeah. And these ones were built in like the early 90s.
Okay.
Couple upgrades. Ships will go to dry dock to get upgrades and repaints and refurbishing and things like that. But
So
most of them,
explain dry dock a little bit more, because I think this is going to come into play with some of more of these smaller ships. How big are the renovations that generally happen on these ships?
they do vary. There's only so much you can do without. It's one of those things where it's what's your drop loss going to be of? Are you going to put tens of millions of dollars into upgrading these other ships? So like Vision class, you're still going to have like a CPAS card you put in, slide out, even maybe a physical key, versus the new ships where everything's like a key fob or your phone or other things. Like the technological advances to upgrade a ship like that can be astronomical. So there's other times where it's like they're not going to do that, but they might add in. So dry dock being they take the ship, they take it out of water, put it up on the pillars, Sherlock Holmes style. It's out of the water. They're doing major construction on it. The renovations are going to be adding. Go on, I can see a face. What's up? Speak
That
to me.
You said Sherlock Holmes style, but you're referencing particular just the fight scene in the second movie. There, I feel like not right. Am I right?
You are, but you also understand the picture of it. Like seeing it, we were on ships for 4 years before I saw one outside dry dock. You're like, and I literally was like, "Oh, dude, it's like Sherlock Holmes!" Like it's like a mind
It
reference of
looks like a shipyard and it's not completed yet. And so the pillars are picking it up, and inside the pocket, they drain everything out. They drain the water because the bottom of those pockets are actually below the sea level. So they're not actually pulled up and lifted out of the water.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah, marvels of engineering. But seeing it and then like actually being there and being like, "Whoa, this was insane!" Like it takes days, and you can literally watch the water level dropping and dropping
Yep.
as they're just siphoning this water out, and you see it. A lot of ships will do it when they cross uh, from like north to south because they have to clean off all like the barnacles and stuff like that. And there's just no other way to do it besides like, yo, we need to drain it, get everything done. But anyway, so they'll do refurbishments. A lot of the older ships, basically up until Oasis class, had a lot more things added on, meaning child play areas, updates to bars and lounges, just updating theaters, the mechanics, the technology's advanced so far that it's like, yo, this isn't going to be a rope rig anymore. This is going to be an automated system to get these things in and out and off stage, stuff like that.
And then oftentimes some of the bars get replaced. They get rid of some of the older bars and bring in some of the more modern ones that they've signed contracts with.
Correct.
Like I remember some of the older ships initially didn't have Johnny Rockets, and they didn't get them until they got refurbished second time
Correct.
around. So you kind of just see a more modernized version of these ships, and we will include which ones have been through dry dock moving forward so that you guys can expect the particular age and class of the ship when we're talking about it.
And I mean, at a certain point, it is the smaller class. I think like the bottom three and a half, they are kind of older, and they're like, hey, you're going on these older ones. They tend to be less expensive, and it's because they don't have all those modern amenities anymore. They don't have the updated things. It's sort of like these ships can go to these crazier ports, and especially like the European routes, like these small ships can go somewhere because they're only holding 2,000 to 2,400 people. So they can get into these small places and not have to worry about a ship that's, got 2, 3 times as much like passenger capacity. But I've never worked on any of these. I've seen a couple, and they're tiny. Like,
Yeah, we used to
there's,
pee on them from the top balcony.
I mean, it's,
We never did, but yeah, it was wild. They
yeah.
were super small. They could, because again, they're probably only, I'd say most 12 decks, 13 decks tall, right?
Mhm.
And we would be looking down from the 18th deck of the Oasis.
These things, yeah. Oh, like we are double the height. Like after doing the research on these and seeing the size comparisons, the length was actually really surprising, but it's the width and breadth of these things that just gets mind-bogglingly like astronomical of how they
Yep.
grow. So again, there's not a lot that I can say about Vision class besides you're going on there. It's tailored to, so they have, like I said, 2,000 to 2,400 guests, but almost half that amount are crew as well. So like up to 1,200 crew. So it is a very catered uh cruise style where you are going on and getting taken care of because
Some could say
12,
traditional cruise.
correct. Yeah. So this is where you're getting more of the luxury, not a lot of kids, especially in the longer itineraries. You are going for relaxation. You're not being boasted with, hey, join us here. Hey, come do this. Hey, like, no, you are relaxing. The art galleries, the food, the smaller pools, things like that. Relaxation. But that leads into the next class up, which is Radiance class. And this is the personal heartthrob of mine because we did our first contract on the Jewel of the Seas, which is one of the Radiants. So there's the Brilliance, the Jewel, the Radiance, and the Serenade of the Seas. And this is where they changed a little bit more of the dynamic. And Radiance class is famous for the amount of windows that are present on the entire ship. Like almost everywhere on the ship, you can see outside. And that was a newer thing done by Royal at the time because Vision class is pretty enclosed. You look at it and you just see tons. It's cabins and cabins and cabins. Not a lot of like glass that you're seeing on the skirts of the ship. So if you're on it, you have to go outside, like go up to the top deck to see outside. Radiance class, I remember that's one where I almost couldn't avoid sunshine because there was so much glass everywhere, which was just magnificent. 13 decks, 12 and a half, if you will. The 13th deck, that's where like we've talked about the encounters with the Crown and Anchor Lounge, and then the one dance floor, but also the introduction of the Centrum. So one giant pillar of just glass that runs from the top of the ship down to the main deck.
One of the
And
coolest rooms.
absolutely. And you can just, like we said, there's a guy playing guitar on deck 3, 4, and you can hear it all the way up on deck 12. And it's just like the mood, he's setting the mood for literally the entire like ship of that part. Again, smaller ship, a lot less activities. This one is up to 90,000 tonnage, about 960 feet long, about same passenger count, couple hundred more, about 2,500 plus. But this one's down to about 900 to 1,000 crew max kind of thing.
Okay.
So, yeah, a lot. Like this is what we started out, and it was like, okay, yeah, it's like a 1-to-3 ratio. We thought that was pretty normal. But again, the smaller ships that let you get everywhere. And our first contract was up to Alaska and stuff. And I would grab a cup of coffee and walk to work. And just because of all the windows, I would see whale watching and dolphins all day. Like they are always there no matter where you're walking. Just very relaxing ambiance. Not a lot of activities to do as a guest because it is just a smaller ship. Again, emphasizing a little bit more of the older shows. It was our first introduction, so we had no idea what they could be, but a lot more focused on the talent rather than the extravagance of screens and technology and everything. Like, no, this is simple backdrops and these performers just crushing it.
I remember they also have great nights on those ships where the featured singers just do songs. Like they literally just come out on stage and do it however they want. They said, what do you want to do? You want to go raise over on there? You want to do it on a bar stool with a guitar? How do you want to do it? You just sing 4 or 5 songs, and it was incredible. It was a very intimate vibe.
Right. The beautiful way to describe it, it's a very intimate kind of cruise where you're going and chilling. This was our first contract, so we were youth staff, and I remember there was a couple guys, like a group of people like our age, and they literally would wait for us to get off work. Like, do you guys want to hang out and do anything? Because there's no one our age like on the ship. We kind of called it the cradle and grave cruise of new families and very much elderly. Again, the longer cruises, things like that, going to Alaska, a lot more relaxation. We would pass by some of the club bar on 13, and it would just be like dead. The waiters and bartenders are just chilling. And it's like, yo, if you're trying to party, that is not your ship. That is the one where, again, you're grabbing a drink and you're sitting outside because what it's seeing, because you mainly sail down the whole coast of the entire Northwest all the way up to Alaska. And it was just amazing to see. Small note, the smaller ships, this one I think is actually one of the fastest classes. Can hit like 27 knots, like 25, 27 knots, but it could vary on the captain and what they're trying to do. But these will also say these ships are the ones that you're going to feel the ocean a lot more. They are smaller. That's where you get like the true pitches and yaws and things like that. So if you're kind of, I'm worried, like that was the other dumb thing I heard is, I get seasick. I was like, dude, if you go on Oasis class, you will not feel the boat move. But
these smaller ships also don't have the wing stabilizers, right?
Correct, yeah.
So the wing stabilizers came out on the later classes of ship. And what happened is they kick out under the water. You never really see them. And what they do is, as the ship's listing, they kick left or right so that the ship actually stabilizes itself. They naturally move to the waves of the ocean. So the wings actually help keep the ship stable. So even in days that you're like, man, how do we feel nothing? That's how you feel nothing.
Side note for anyone who does get seasick, the pressure point things, super clutch. You don't even need to buy little marble wrists. Green apples, amazing. And never go lay down in your bed. Don't lay down. I don't know how long you personally experienced this, but especially on that ship, when you're standing, you develop like a two-step where you're constantly just doing like a little box step while you're standing there, because then your body's self-stabilizing. It's the people that sit down, that lay down, then they're really feeling the ocean. And we would get back on land, especially after the first couple contracts, and I'm standing at a bar and I'm just like swaying and constantly moving. And people are like, "Are you either on something or too drunk?" I'm like, "No, I'm just used to never stopping moving. Like you're always stepping in." You never did this?
Never had that problem. Not
Small.
constantly. I know what you're talking about. Like when the ship's rocking, but I never had it happen so often that it became a natural state of my life. No.
Oh yeah, I would go to bars after I'd come back and see friends and just be just standing there, just constantly like moving around. Just like, sorry, man, I'm used to 6 months of just like constantly moving. I mean, but I also still answer the phone like, "This is Nagy from sports." Like that's always happened. I'm a simple man. I get ingrained in my things. Um, but yeah, that was also the introduction of the schooner bar. So that's where it's the ship themed bar. This is where Royal started to introduce different things with each class of ships. Where again, you're going to lounges. They got the piano bars there. You're going to a place to just sit, drink, have some vibes set. The guitars, the pianos. Um, I remember the art gallery on the Jewel was just beautiful. I wanted to buy a bunch of art because you're walking by it every day. Where a lot of the newer ships is kind of like tucked away by the casinos or things like that. This one's like, no, these are all the artwork. You could buy it, you bid on it, you can go to the auctions and they box it up and ship it right to your door, kind of thing. Like very cool things that they would do for you. What's the smallest class that you ever worked?
Navigator.
Okay, we're getting to that. We're getting to that. Because next is Voyager class. And that one is 130,000 tons. This one's where it gets up to about 1,100 feet, 3,100 passengers, kind of upping it to about 1,100 crew. Um, these ones include the Adventure, the Explorer, the Mariner, and the Navigator and the Voyager.
Yep.
And these ships were the first one to really change the game through the cruise industry with the introduction of the first ice rink, the Flow Rider. I remember seeing the commercials because now this was the introduction of the rock climbing wall. So this is where Royal really started pushing the adventure of
The rock wall
cruising.
wasn't on the Radiance?
It was on Radiance class, but this is where they really started pushing it. And I'm not sure, I don't have in my notes if they added or not, because Jewel did have a rock wall, but because of the itinerary, it was closed so much
Yeah.
that, yeah. So this is
That's
where
why
they really
every
started.
sports staff wanted that itinerary so that they could
Yep.
just get off the ports and all day long and just go hang out and do whatever.
Oh yeah, and I talked about it before where I had the guy that we'd go up and there'd be a light breeze and the bell at the top of the Jewel would kind of be ringing. He's like, too windy. I was like, for what? Like, can we please climb and do this? And yeah, so that's when we would cross train a lot and just like Jared and I just always wanted to climb because we're like, can we do it? Like, nah. It's probably gonna storm later. We're closing. Like, dude, get out of here! Like, come on, man. Like, but otherwise, the itinerary is like, especially because in the winter it goes from there's certain ships that go from like New England to Canada and down, and it's just cold. It's like, yo, it's 10 degrees, 15 degrees outside, like nothing's open. And then when you go inside, it's like, oh, okay, this is a very much lounging ship of chairs everywhere, all kinds of junk. But anyway, back to Voyager class. The ice rink, that was the huge thing. But this is where the ice shows really started. So now not only do you have the theater, you have the ice rink. So they're introducing way new things that they put on the ship. And did you ever work ice shift?
No, not when I was handing out skates and stuff. That was always the ice skating team that always did that.
They would do it for the most part, things like that. Always heard that it was just about as much fun as roller skating because, yeah, it's it's a
It's
people
like
picture.
here's the thing. You get there are two types of people. You either know how to skate or you don't know how to skate. And
Yeah,
there's only about 20% of them that know how to skate. The other
yeah,
80% could have maybe done it, tried it, sort of, but they don't know how to do it. And when they don't know how to do it, they want to do it for all of 3 minutes because they
yeah,
realize how hard it is and how they're not going to learn in the next 10 minutes on how to figure
yeah,
out how to do this.
yeah.
And that's
Going
how
on to a cruise learn how to ice skate or rollerblade. You're like, hey man, you could probably spend your time not in pain and doing that. And the other thing is the ice rinks, like I said, it's not a hockey rink. It's like what, 40 by 60? Like they're not
yards, yeah.
big.
I'd say it's about that.
Yeah, like
It's
the things that the skaters can do on them is magnificent because it is such a small thing. Where you're like, yeah, that guy just did 3 laps to get up to speed to do one triple axle kind of thing. Like it's because there's no room to do it and no room for error.
And that's
So
after that, after the two of them whipped him into the first one, and Ari gave him a gave him
yeah,
a yeet to get him going. Gave
you needed booster pads to get that one. Now I get a lot of flack, and there's been several comments about it because I always confuse Voyager class with Freedom class. I
hmm
merge these two together constantly. So Jared and I did work on the Voyager. And I think we did it when it got a new flow rider in Singapore, which installing that was a nightmare in 90-degree, 150% humidity. Like, dude, I was drenched constantly. And we were like, it was in a it was like a partial dry dock. I don't know. It was just getting redone, and um, but Freedom class is about another. I mean, it's another 10, 12 tons bigger, 12,000, excuse me. So this one's 150,000 gross tonnage, another 4,500 passengers. So bigger. This is where the ships start getting wider. So they're not getting longer and bigger; they're getting wider. So now they're kind of expanding out. So the length of ships doesn't actually change drastically from here on out, which was very surprising. But it's the width and the height that this is where they start just this is their bulking phase where they start getting way bigger. And so this is the Freedom, the Liberty, and the Independence. Um, and this is when they get up to 18 decks. Always still the same kind of shape. The deck change is always going to be this one. It's like the windjammer, the cafeteria kind of thing. Bars, lounges, they kind of start stacking, but it's not like the full length of the ship anymore. Up until this point, most of these ships, when they're 12, 13 decks, they are across. Now they start kind of towering out in different places. Um, and like we talked about, this was also the biggest class for like charters because with 4,500 passenger count and about 1,300 crew still, it's a lot easier to rent out the ship to that many. So that's where when we were on the Independence, this is where it got chartered out like 5 times in 4 months while we were there.
Word. I never worked on a
Lovely.
freedom. I had never worked on a freedom class. I think I've only seen them. I don't really have much to say on
Oh,
them.
yeah. Oh. So I mean, from a staffing perspective, it
Never
was
worked on
very
them.
because there was the 3 things that you started doing, and it was Flowrider, Rockwall, tournaments.
hmm
Um, and it was a smaller staff. A sports staff is usually like 12, 13 of us because you'd have 3 on the Flowrider, 3 on the Rockwall. Somebody's at desk, 2 people on the wave. Somebody's at desk, 2 people on the Rockwall. Um, and then somebody else running Yes, it's like 8 of us, and then somebody else running tournaments, and then maybe some relief. And like you said, it's you work one shift during the day, like morning, you're on Flow Rider, you're alternating between the three of you. Then afternoon, you're on Rockwall, and then you kind of have one or two people bouncing back and forth for relief and tournaments. Um, and then later on, you started getting other activities and things like that. But very chill. Very that was the most structured lifestyle we ever had, where it was you look in the morning, you're like, all right, I'm on Flow Rider, and you look the next day, like, all right, I'm on Rockwall, and you knew you were on the inverse in the afternoon, and
And you were
that's
done
the
at
only
6 every day. If you
yeah.
didn't have doors on your Tuesday or whatever.
And it'd only be like two people on doors because they'd go from like doors from the theater to doors to the ice rink, vice versa, and like that was your shift. Otherwise, everybody else was off. Uh, and I think that was probably the closer teams you get because they are somewhere like they are more intimate. That's where the guests, they're flow riding in the morning, then they go have lunch, whatever, and they're like, "Oh, let's try rock climbing in the afternoon." And you're from one to the other. You're like, "Hello again." Like, "Oh, I know you. You're not very coordinated. Why don't you start on this easy route?" Or, "I know you're not very coordinated. Why don't you try the boogie board first?" Like a lot more fun, but just different to kind of be a guest on and things like that. The ping pong tournaments were useless. The ping pong tables were like right in the back, and it was a wind tunnel. And you're like, you literally throw the ball to someone like 6 feet away, and it's like, well, that's par for the whole course, guys. So, you know, well, that was a cheap shot. Like, welcome to ping pong on ships. Like, kind of get used to it.
Yeah.
But now we're into the fun ones. This is where things really hit a game changer of quantum class. So there's the Quantum, the Anthem, the Ovation, and then later on was the Spectrum and Odyssey. And this was all the introduction of what they called ultra classes.
Hmm.
So the Spectrum and the Odyssey are considered ultra quantum class, meaning they just added, again, bulkier, more room, more space, but same size of ships.
So they just kind of
And
beefed it out and added 500
yeah,
cabins.
exactly. So we're up to 170,000 gross tonnage now. So another 20,000 pounds on top of the Freedom class.
So back to the Titanic. Where are we at in relation to the Titanic right
Triple,
now? Because we're about halfway through the classes.
triple. So this is triple the size of the Titanic. And a little note I forgot, Radiance class, when we were in Seattle on the Jewel, we docked next to an aircraft carrier and we were looking down on it. So everyone's seen Top Gun Maverick. You've seen that Leviathan there. That thing was dwarfed by Radiance class. Now I'm gonna guess that tonnage is way more because of the massive ships and the ships them like battleships themselves. But an aircraft carrier, I would compare to uh like um oh, Vision class. Like they are similar in size. So that was a small thing, but now, like I said, we are triple the size of the Titanic.
And
But this
just some other fun measurements, just because we know some things. How tall is the Quantum class with the North Star stuck all the way up?
I think it was like 380 feet.
And how tall was the Titanic?
Let me do some Googling.
Okay. TV timeout. So now I need to look how tall. I'll look up the Quantum and Oasis class, Quantum ones. Let me look that up.
175 feet was Titanic. When you bring it
Um,
back, we'll do the right from where you said, how tall is the Titanic? And I'll jump in with that. Can I just make one little point of order or query for you? So this is we're almost done. We've got quantum class, got a lot to talk about. Oasis class, icons, small bits. You can talk about some
Oasis
of the
class
stuff.
and icon are not going to be small bits. They feature the most amount of items.
Yeah. What I'm saying is, it's at this point, it's just like a lecture, like you said. This is just somebody could have Google searched it, but like I said, I wanted us to say it. I would go back and I want to have just a fucking open conversation about these, if that's okay with you. So we can add some our fun into it.
Sure.
Because I have a lot of notes on things.
All right. So, it says here it's more than 300 feet. So we'll call it 320. That sounds about right. 320 feet tall. And how tall was the
5? I would say like double. Like I have no problem saying like you
take one Titanic and stack it on top of the other, and that's the height of the Quantum.
Is it the Quantum or is it the North Star?
Quantum with the North Star extended. So okay. The whole class, I'm guessing, is about the same height.
All right. So we'll bring it back in, and you can ask how tall the Titanic was.
How tall was the Titanic?
So the Titanic sat at a 175 on top deck.
And how tall is the Quantum?
With the Quantum class with the North Star fully extended, it was like 350. So double. So you take a Titanic, you take another Titanic, and now you're sitting at the top of the North Star looking down. Which again blew my mind that, like you said, you'd have somebody up there being like, yeah, you're not really missing much. Like, bro, you are a football field in the air looking down on a cruise ship in the middle of the ocean. And you say like, yeah, just like a cool elevator. Like, bro, get out of here. Like, are you kidding me? If I could make this thing go down faster because of you, I would. Like, oh, no respect for those guys. But quantum class, so this is where we're up to like 1,1600 crew. But this was, again, they have a bunch of firsts that they did, which I didn't know about. Like, you kind of became a part of, and it was pretty mind-boggling to learn of. They introduced the iFly, so the indoor skydiving. So you can go skydiving at sea. The introduction of the 270-degree lounge, 270, which at the back of the ship was a bay of windows that wrap 270 degrees around. So you can sit there. They have the cafe. They have some bars. You can just sit there and see all of the ocean as you're sailing. You can see the huge wake and everything going on. And then they'd lower the screens as well as the introduction of the robotic TVs and things like that. The shows that happen there are just absolutely astounding. The stabilization, and then this is actually the introduction of the blue hull. So up until this point, all ships were just white. They were the Royal Caribbean cruise ship white. And then when Quantum class started coming out, they started painting the hull blue. And then later on with the Odyssey, they started making the letters massive. And so this is where it was almost like a giant marketing tool where you started being able to identify a ship from a far distance. And up until that point, you could basically only identify Carnival because of the giant red and blue whale tail, the exhaust system. You're like, okay, that's a Carnival, things like that. At this point, you started being able to identify, one, that it's a Royal. Two, you could probably read the name on the side because it was so big. But then this was also the introduction of the outside artwork. So you can help me out here. We were on Ovation. Ovation has the giant pandas.
Mm-hmm.
Anthem has the giraffe.
The giraffe. It had the red giraffe. Yep.
No, the Quantum has the red polar bear.
And we had a red giraffe.
Was it a red giraffe? I thought he was colored yellow because it's a giraffe.
I don't know. It was a giraffe. We all know that.
We can agree it was a giraffe. So this was the introduction again of more things to be able to identify the ship itself by the exterior decorations.
There was a lot more firsts than just those. There was the introduction of the Seaplex, which is on no other class of ship.
Correct. And this
There's
was the indoor sports area. So full size basketball court indoors. The trapeze, the roller skating, the bumper cars, everything that kind of goes with it that we've talked about. So these are the ships where there is a lot more to do on them. This is where Royal is starting to be like, hey, you're on an amazing ship. You can stay here and do things on this ship versus we're going to these amazing locations kind of thing.
Yeah, and then also don't forget this is the only class that features the Esplanade.
Correct. Now, what would you say the difference between the Promenade, which I believe was Nav's first one,
Yep.
like the indoor mall. So what would you
Mhm.
say the difference between the Esplanade and a Promenade?
Yeah. So generally, the Promenade doesn't run the whole length of the ship in the classical senses. They end at the theaters or in any way, shape, or form. The Esplanade runs the whole length of the ship. You go theater to theater and goes from that front end all the way from the 270. So the Royal Theater all the way to 270. And that main hallway is where you're doing, I'd say, 80% of the activities at
Yeah.
night on the ship is all inside that area. They've basically created a giant city inside that small little funnel. Whereas if you look at all the other ships, activities are a little bit more spread out at night because the boardwalk will be busy or up in the Diamond Lounge or whatever. Whereas on the Quantum class ships, they focus your entertainment and venue so that it feels very city-like and active and moving, as opposed to the other ships where you feel like you have space.
Right.
I think that's
Which is
probably the
interesting.
best way to describe it.
I didn't like it at first.
I loved it.
Like
I thought it was the coolest
I was
thing ever.
used to looking down and seeing everything, and you're looking down at giant tunnel. You're like, I cannot believe I'm in the interior of a ship right now. You know, there's rooms and balconies and everything, and then the shops and Sorrentos and a couple bars. You're like, it's all right here. It's very cool. And then when we got on the Esplanade, I was like, you can't see it. It literally makes like an S turn through the ship,
Mm-hmm.
and it took some getting used to. But then, like you said, it's wow, this is set up for entertainment. Where well, also the introduction of the bionic bar. So this is where the robots, you go type in a drink, you can either pick one or make your own, and the robots go and make you a drink. Very cool. But also the introduction of like the music hall.
I was
And
about
like
to
you
say the
said, there's
Rock Hall.
yeah, the music hall, the rock hall. That's a venue where they've got live bands playing constantly, karaoke going constantly. And then right outside that is the pub. And they've either got a live singer. There's not a lot of TVs. They don't do a lot of sports in the pub, things like that. But then you can go somewhere else and you can see the sports
It's
and playmakers.
more
and stuff
designed
that.
like an English pub as opposed to
Yeah.
the Americanized version of a
American,
pub.
throw a bunch of TVs and just let me drink. No, which I think is cooler because it creates more of an intimate set of you got the singer, you got some drinks, little bar food menu, and then you can walk through it. And they had all the moving artwork, which was always really cool. I think Anthem had the one where you could put your hand down and it takes your pulse and then lights up the lights. Ovation had like moving like feathers and things that would kind of match moods and stuff like that. And then there's the restaurants, and then like you said, then it goes right back to 270, and you're like swept through almost just to be like, oh wow, I thought we were at one theater, and 3 bars later now we're in 270. Like whoa, okay, amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So it took some getting used to because I was again used to that open plan of shops, blah blah blah. Everything's almost like gridded out to the flow of quantum class, which was just crazy. And again, became our home for 2 years. So I did that one always, besides the jewel, holds the most special place in my heart because it was just so much fun to be on.
Yeah. So moving on
But
up.
it's Jefferson style.
Nope.
So now it brings us to the Oasis class. And if you have watched the commercial, you picture any kind of luxury, things like that, you are picturing Oasis class. Anything you want to do, this is Oasis class. We are up to 225 to 235,000 gross tonnage. These are leviathans. Like I keep using this word because I never knew how to describe it, but each time I see one of these bigger ships, they blow my mind. But the funniest thing was from Freedom class. So we're going back down 2 classes. You're sitting around 1,100 feet. Oasis class is sitting around 1,200 feet. That's it. Like it's only another 100, 200 feet bigger. And Royal did it very specially where with each Oasis class they put out, it was the biggest ship in the world. And then they would only beat it by like a couple feet. And then that was the biggest ship. And then they'd do a refurb and it'd be the new biggest one. And then the new
I don't
ship
know
would
if
come out.
that was special or if it was just like a dick measuring contest with themselves.
Oh, it absolutely was, but you still get the record and the money. So they did. It's like Usain Bolt when he's like, "Yeah, I backed off a little bit so I can come back in 4 years and break it again."
And when
like,
you say they added 10 feet, they added like 10 feet to the very tip of the bow. Like, don't make
Yeah.
it sound like they said, oh, 10 feet, we can fit in another cabin. No way. They just put a little flagpole that went out an extra 6 inches.
Exactly.
So,
Just say like, "Yo, this is the new biggest one in the world." Like, okay, sure, you got it. But I was actually really surprised. I literally had to check my notes like 3 times. I was like, these ships are all, it all says like 1,200 to 1,300 feet for the next like gross of things. I was like, what is even going on with this? But Oasis class features the Oasis, the Allure, the Harmony, the Symphony, the Wonder, and the Utopia. And I was actually blown away. I've been on every Oasis class ship. I worked the Oasis, the Allure, and the Symphony, and then have been on the Wonder and the Utopia. So that was like we avoided Harmony because we've talked about it before that it was a work in progress. It was like the first pancake, if you will.
yeah, there's, so how did it exactly work? I think it was, the ships were built in Germany. They bought the Royal Caribbean owned the plans and took them to STX France to have it built.
Right.
And STX France, from my understanding, just took pictures of the ship and then tried to match it to the measurements based on that.
There is no.
I'm sure these guys did much more than that. But if you pasteled and painted the Allure in the Oasis, it would kind of look like this. There'd be a few little mistakes off. Everything would be like just slightly off because your angle of lighting wasn't quite right. So,
like the Oasis was the first one. They made it. It was glorious. I worked 2 contracts there. It's where we met. Nothing but good vibes. The Allure, everyone said, was the happier of the 2. They're like, dude, once like Allure's a little bit better. Like they just got a little bit better stuff. They kind of fine-tuned it. Then, like you said, they switched to Harmony and they kind of got it, but also
they built the
kind
same
of-
ship.
Yeah, but again, small upgrades everywhere. And this was also the introduction of the 2 flow riders up until Symphony. So you like people that actively are, we call them flow rats, the guys that literally will go on cruises because they can go ride the flow rider all day, every day. This is where we met many of the patrons that came on cruises constantly. This is where I met Annika and things like that. Like people that went to ride. Like this is where people are seeking activities and know exactly what they want.
So, what other features are there exclusive to Oasis class ships? Aqua Theater?
The carousel. So this is the introduction of the boardwalk.
Okay.
So the exterior, the back end of the ship, there's the boardwalk, and you've got the carousel, bars and lounges, Johnny Rockets, ice cream parlor. Then the introduction of the
It's
aqua
designed
theater.
like Coney Island, but on a cruise
Exactly.
ship.
And then there's the aqua theater. So this is the first water feature theater on board cruise ships where they're doing all the shows we've talked about, from synchronized swimming, physical acts, slacklining, diving, high diving, extra high diving. These are on ships. Central Park. So in the middle of the ship, we've talked about that there's the area you can go to with fine dining restaurants, but tons of real flora, trees, ambiance that, again, you can go, I'm in the middle of the Caribbean, but I'm walking through trees and things that are only in X place in the world.
And they go out of their way to hire people that work specifically on those plants on that ship. There's 2 or 3 guys. Huh?
Horticulturalists.
Exactly. There's 2 to 3 guys that are that's their exclusive jobs on those ships, is to take care of those plants.
Yeah. And it is amazing that year round, 365, you will have flowers that you're like, that shouldn't be blooming right now. Way to go. Absolutely phenomenal. This was also the introduction of laser tag onto ships, which then spread. We were on the Symphony when laser tag came on. So the ice rink that we've talked about, Oasis class, obviously going to be way bigger. The rink is way bigger. And now they've put laser tag activities. So Oasis class is for, you got a family, someone who's 3 years old, less than, and 80 years old, more than. You're going on Oasis class because there's something to do for everyone. You're going to have a reunion. They're going there. And our laser tag introduction was insane. So if you've ever been to modern, when's the last time you went and played laser tag?
Probably 15 or 20 years ago.
Did you ever go on ships?
No, I never. We didn't. I never played it. They didn't have it on the Harmony on the 3 that I was on. Those
So I
are
remember
only in the later versions of this ship, to be completely clear.
I remember playing it on land and getting rocked. Laser tag is so much fun. I absolutely love it now. But when they put it on ships, it was crazy because they cover the ice rink in like a floor, and then we roll out these huge inflatables and put on the fans, blow them all up, set it all up, and then we'd run laser tag for most of the days when there's not shows going on, which is pretty much every day, but the nights, there's laser tag going on most of those times. So these huge inflatable things, and you're running laser tag, and it became just like a blast. Like it was my tertiary workout of, I'm going to laser tag. Oh, are you guys short a person? Yeah, I'll jump in there and go play laser tag. So much fun. But that was the introduction that then spread to ships. And side note, I was also on the Allure when they started introducing pickleball. Is the introduction of the Abyss. So this was the slide we've talked about that goes from the top of the sports deck down to the boardwalk. 9 decks, crazy fast, super awesome. And again, this is where Royal is emphasizing you can see these things from afar. It is a giant anglerfish, purple, yellow lights, and the slides are all lit up. You can identify these things from literally miles away. The zip line that goes across the ship, first zip line at sea, and the bars. I mean, again, they are emphasizing everything you can do on a ship. So we have named numerous activities. Now there's just
and it is all over the place. It is all over the place. You could go anywhere and everywhere.
You couldn't throw a baseball without hitting somewhere you can get a drink or food. And this is where it really starts emphasizing the resort style cruising of, you're on a ship, but you actually don't need to leave. These ones are mainly going to be in the Caribbean. I can't find any factual information, but I know that we have to keep one in Asia. And it's just because it holds so many people, and they want one in Asia because it's just grinding out people and revenue and things like that. But these ships are designed that it's like, hey, you're going on this ship, you're going to hit a couple of Caribbean islands, you're going to hit the main island, but there's constant activities to do on board. Where if you don't want to get off in Jamaica, you are on the ship being entertained all day, every day. You are in an island resort that just happens to be traveling to different places around the world. And the fact that they hold 65, 6,800 passengers, it's a small city, but they've done it amazingly where I never felt crowded on ships. When we took our baby moon on the Wonder, and when we did the crash course on the Utopia, I was like, I know there are 6,500 people on this ship, and I am not really waiting in line for a lot of things. Like, it is mind blowing that these things operate. And the only time you really realize it is when you dock and you get off. If the boat's parked one way and you get off at the front, you're like, oh, I have a very long walk to get even to the back of the ship and then start my walk to get to an island. Like, it is mind boggling that these things are afloat and what they offer.
All right. So what's the last class there is?
Last class is the Icon. And this
So-
one tops. Good.
No, I was just going to ask that question. Go ahead. You were about to
All
answer.
right, it tops 250,000 gross tonnage. We are up to 5 times the size of the Titanic.
And is it wider, taller? Is it longer than these Oasis class ships? How can we expect to see all this extra gross tonnage?
So most Oasis class average 1,800 feet. This one, the Icon, is 1,200 feet plus. So only a little bit longer, but dude, the width, insane. Like, these things get so much broader. Another 1,000 passengers. So up to 7,600 passengers, 2,300 crew, and 20 decks. So fully yoked out, massive ship. And the Icon has the Pearl. They introduced a circular ice rink rather than the square. The pool areas focus way more on kind of separating. So Oasis class, there's a lot of things like you can play on kids in the boardwalk, then you go to the pool lounge, blah, blah, blah. Icon class is like, no, Adventure Ocean, kid pool, kid area in one part of the ship. Up top, slides, flow rider, climbing area, putt-putt, everything's in another side of the ship. And then the bars everywhere, lounges, bars, you name it. They like have another 7 different destinations that you can go to for. Do you want to be in a little bit of water? Do you want to go to the tiki bar? Do you want to be in like a lounge overlooking the ship? Like, these things are now geared towards what type of activity do you want? It is segmented around the ship. And it was mind-boggling to walk around just being like, you walk through a gateway and you're in a different world. This one is the lounge and food. This one is the water activities and bar. This one is the kids. This one is the athletics. It was astounding. We conquered maybe half the ship in the crash cruise we did. And Jara got to extend because of her work. And she goes, we didn't even touch the surface of some of the things on there. And it was phenomenal to even be there for a bit where, like I said, Oasis class, you're taking the whole family. Icon class, you're taking the whole family, but you're probably not even seeing them because there's so many things going on where it's like, just meet at dinner at 6 because we are going to be doing such different activities that we're not even going to cross paths. Just crazy.
All right. Is there any other firsts on the Icon class?
Besides the Pearl, and then, I mean, dude, we could list the foods of every class and things like that, but just again the sheer size, like
So it's
to me
just
the
going to be
biggest.
the astounding volume of this ship that you're
Yeah,
really going to go see the grandeur of what a theme park on an ocean can look like.
right. Where it's like, hey, we're going on the Icon. All right, where's it going? Doesn't matter. You probably won't even notice because it's you could spend your entire cruise walking around some of these ships, and if you didn't step off, you'd still be like, I think I missed something on the ship. Versus when you get off at a port and you're like, oh, cool, let's go do this for the day or not. Like it was absolutely insane.
Nice. Well, we've got two things that we actually didn't hit that we need to hit before we go off is where are the people going to find Freedom class ships and where are they going to find Quantum class ships going?
So this year, Freedom class ships, and again, I kind of like lumping them in with the Voyager class because those ships are like, again, that's just me. Freedom class ships doing a lot of the Caribbean for 6 and 8 night cruises. Indy is also one that hits up Northern Europe, so the Norwegian fjords, things like that. Liberty does Bermuda to Canada, so that does the east
Which, to
side
be
a lot.
clear, if you're on the Icon of the Seas, you're not hitting up any fjords. So,
No, that it's so big that you're again when you're getting on the bigger the ship, you can expect the less. I don't want
the
to say
less place,
majestic.
just in general, the less places it can go because
Yeah.
it can't hit these smaller ports. There's some ports that the dock doesn't even go out far enough to catch these ships. So
Oh, I
they
remember
physically can't bring the ship in.
when we were on the Symphony and it docked somewhere. The hotel director's like, "We're gonna open up this gangway portal, and if they've completed construction, we can get people off the ship. If not, we have to divert everybody to the front half." Like they're so big that it's like, yeah, you just people don't have ships that can dock something that's 2,000 feet long. Like it just doesn't happen. So the smaller the ship, the better the ports. Bigger the ship, again, you're going on for the ship, things like that. So it's always a little bit of a toss up on what kind of vacation which you want, which we're going to touch on later. But for the bigger the ship, expect that you're going for the ship. The smaller the ship, you're going for those itineraries and things like that.
So back to my question, where does the quantum classes go and where will the people find them?
Quantum classes, quantum is going to be in Alaska, New Zealand, and the West Coast down to LA and Mexico, things like that. Spectrum is going to be solely in Asia, doing a lot of Japan, Vietnam, and China. The Odyssey is hanging out in the Caribbean, doing longer cruises, and Europe to the Greek Isles and Turkey. And Anthem is hanging out in Singapore and Thailand, doing Alaska run, and back to Alaska and down to Australia, New Zealand.
So you'll find those quantum class ships all over the place.
Yeah, they're going to be Quantum class hits up a lot of the Pacific Ocean and does some crazy itineraries, which touches on some of my favorite ports. But those are the ones where they're just big enough to have all the activities, but just small enough to get to some of those sweet, sweet places.
Cool. All right. So
All right,
you want to
and
keep going or
well,
that's what I'm asking you now. Do you want we're at an hour and 9. Once I chop it down, it's going to be probably about an hour and 5. Hour and 3.
okay.
So do you want to keep going cuz you were talking about having
I mean, I think I could go either way. Part of me just wants to finish up being like, guys, sorry, this is just kind of just like a data dump on you guys.
You don't need to apologize. It was what it is. We never apologize to our audience.
Right. But I would just say, like, yo, that was the data dump of cruising. And now you kind of understand it more
Of Royal
and
Caribbean ships.
of Royal Caribbean ships. And next, it's going to be like, all right, here's now I want to do an episode on why you should take a cruise. And we can touch on other branches and stuff.
Okay. Cool. Then close it out.
All right, guys. Well, that is the factual data dump. My mind is fried with all those, so appreciate you sticking with it. But now you've got a taste of what Royal Caribbean has to offer you on different ships, and we will inform you more on why you should take a ship's cruise later. Let me try that again. So you can stop it when you were drinking your water. All right, guys. Well, that is our data dump on Royal Caribbean class ships, and we got a lot of information to tell you about other ships and why cruising is an amazing thing for you. But otherwise, I think, Chris, what do you want to leave the people with, my man?
Leave the people with, there is a variety of things out there, and there's a different ship for everybody. And just do a little bit of research, and one, you're going to be awestruck of whatever you find. And two, there's definitely a ship out there that does what you want it to do.
Absolutely. Because there's a lot of traveling to do, and you need to get out there and just start doing it.
Till next time.
Appreciate